Welcome to Streaming Into the Void, where we discuss all the streaming news for the week ending March 15th, 2024. I'm Kim Hollis, who made a Queen's Blood move so incredible it shocked even her, aka me.
Fate of the multiverse is at stake, and yet we're playing card games against ghosts. That's a real thing that happened.
I am here to tell you that card game in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the most addictive thing ever.
Any good RPG has a mini game that distracts you for multiple hours, even though, the world is on the brink of destruction.
Sure does. With me are Tim Bridey, content creator and gamer, owner of a new sofa.
Just showed up a couple hours ago. No idea what happened. Anyone have any information on that?
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Also, David Mumpower, author of Behind the Ride and streaming media analyst, whose March Madness bracket will be in shambles by this time next week.
Not this time. This time I'm going to have the perfect bracket.
Okay, sure you will. And the podcast is produced and edited by Raul Burial, who's missing a sofa.
Hey.
Huh. Weird happenings afoot. This week, a Harris X survey exclusive to IndieWire revealed that 2/3 of U.S. adults polled would rather wait to watch movies on streaming.
You mean the thing we've been saying for 3.5 years now?
That is literally the premise of this podcast. So time for the ratings then.
I mean, are we going to unfire Jason Kyler at Warner Brothers Discovery now? Because it would save billions of dollars.
And Warner Brothers Discovery would be in a lot better shape.
Exactly. Basically what happened was IndieWire solicited a poll, and I'm not pointing fingers. I think the world of IndieWire, we've actually done interviews with them in the past, had a very strong working relationship with them over the years. But IndieWire has been very firm on the fact that the movie industry is coming back to the theatrical experience. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So they commissioned a poll with Harris X, and they fully expected this poll to, support the things they were saying. And it didn't at all. I mean, it was bad. Only 1/3 of people say they would prefer to watch a movie in theaters, which means 2/3 would rather watch it at home. And that is exactly not Hollywood wanted to happen here. And that's why everyone is so freaked out. I mean, Raul, we've been saying it for ages now, but this is the data support that Hollywood has experienced an extinction level event, isn't it?
We kid about it a little bit, but it's obvious that people who were previously accustomed to going to a movie theater to watch a movie have been trained instead to want to watch those movies on streaming. Now, that was a combination of just the advent of streaming services and the pandemic itself, which drove a lot of the growth in streaming services. But we do also have to ask ourselves, how many people used to go to the movies before the pandemic? 2/3 of Americans means that 1/3 of Americans would still rather watch a movie in theaters. That is still a lot of people. That is still enough to maintain a theatrical industry, isn't it?
Sure, it absolutely is. It's just, I don't even think this should be written as a streaming thing, because if you just think about your entire life, and I've been saying this for years now, and man, people break out the torches and pitchforks when I do it, but we watch most of our movies at home. That was the VHS industry. That was the DVD and Blu-ray industry. That has also been the way we have watched cable television and network television on the weekends. It used to be that TNT and TBS would do their Star Wars weekends. Everyone knew what to expect, and that was we consumed most of our movies on the secondary market in these ways. However, if you wanted to see the new exclusive theatrical release, you actually had to go to the theater, and that was how they monetized the entire thing. This data suggests half of consumers are streaming movies weekly, which means there is still ample demand for this kind of content, but they're streaming 7 times as much as they're willing to go to theaters, and that's just the data right there that the boomer crowd is wanting to ignore and ignore and ignore, and it just shows we have multiple generations of people we have trained. It's better to watch things at home. And you're saying it's enough to survive. And the answer is yes, if you do higher ticket prices and you spend less money on marketing, because that's where the expenses are. You have to monetize this, which means it needs to pay for itself during a theatrical release. That's not really happening. And Raul, I don't know how carefully you looked at this poll. We really haven't spoken much this week. Have you looked at the reasons why people are saying they prefer the theatrical experience? Because one of them, I kid you not, is the quality of surround sound systems. Is that really a reason?
Yeah, I was actually going to get into that because they asked people who said, well, if you prefer to watch movies in theaters or more streaming, and then what's your primary reason for that? And 59% said of those who prefer to still watch a movie in the theater said the experience of watching a movie on the big screen. And then second, 47%, yes, the quality of surround sound systems. That's astounding to me.
I will say that given the hardships that movie theater chains are undergoing these days, such as Regal and AMC, we're starting to see movie theaters that are rough around the edges. My local theaters, for instance, are not appealing to me at all. I don't want to go there because the screens are bad, the seating is bad. It's just a poor experience. So that's definitely got to be weighing on the consumers.
Yeah, we're lucky here because, well, Regal is headquartered here and we have some of their flagship theaters. So those theaters are really nice. Pretty much that's the only game in town, though we do have a Cinemark that is the one we choose to go to lately. But I can't believe the surround sound vote either, because that's a big reason I don't like to go to movies. They're too loud for me.
Yeah, I find that amazing. I mean, 39% said escaping from distractions at home, 37% theater recliners, 32% refreshments. I mean,
a lot of homes actually have recliners, so I'm not sure how that's like a huge positive for a movie theater. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Like you're telling me the movie theater is more comfortable than your home setup. And then, exclusive to theaters, 30%, IMAX, which I would totally buy, 3D IMAX, 30%, that really should be higher. Watching with an audience, 26%, premiere or special screening, 25%, and nostalgia, 24%. I mean, seriously?
That's right, folks. This survey, which was intended to be pro-theatrical experience, one of the top reasons it can support is nostalgia, which is a polite way of saying, oh, it's a dated concept and I know it, but I kind of like it. I always miss it when I don't do it. That is not what you want to be saying right there. That's like saying, gee, I really miss crinkling a newspaper, okay? That's what you say about a dead thing. And it starts making me nervous that maybe, just maybe, we're going to look at movie theaters in our area the same way we look at abandoned malls right now. This was a very, very alarming set of data. And Tim, I mean, we're joking about it, but like surround sound, distractions, and theater recliners, none of those is like super pro for a movie theater experience. Because, I mean, there's lots of other distractions now outside the home that didn't used to be a possibility. So You're competing in that one. And then we get to the fact that the movie is exclusively shown in theaters at 30%. That's only because that's what they do as a business model right now, which means people are going to theaters because they have to. And we keep saying when films like Five Nights at Freddy's come out that giving consumers a choice is important. And it doesn't seem to have a significant impact on the box office because we're still seeing films do well when they have that release.
With the right movie, and something like Five Nights at Freddy's was absolutely perfect for day and date.
So what I really think happened, and we're not even getting to the pros of the home experience yet, but what I really think happened is when Jason Kyler saw this survey, he was like, they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen. They would not listen, but I tried to tell them.
I told you so, yes.
It justifies literally everything he was trying to do, and they fired him for it. Oh, and this seems like a good time to mention that the two people who are most against it are the director of Dune and the director of Oppenheimer, both of whom are having really good weeks. So,
yeah. And then for the people who said they would prefer to wait for streaming, the two biggest reasons were 53% said cost of movie tickets and 42% said cost of concessions. So yeah, money. And it's very funny, like going back to the days of box office profits, even 10 years ago, we just kept saying, hey, the movie experience, even for a family, is a relative bargain for, a 2 to 3 hour experience than relative to the cost of almost anything else. And that really became less and less true as the decade went on. And then, ignoring the whole pandemic thing, which is a reason cited over down the list, concerns over sanitation and hygiene, 23%. But yeah, I do think cost really, I think that's accurate. Cost is the biggest factor. Movies were not as cheap as they used to be.
Just to a larger point, it is pretty close between right now the cost of a year of Disney Plus versus a family of 5 watching one movie in the theater and buying concessions for everyone. Like 2 movies, I'm almost totally sure that unless you're going to like the bargain theater, that you are going to run into this. So it is not at all surprising to anyone who's actually paid attention to the math on it. And yet this particular poll, people are like, let's just not talk about it and maybe it'll go away. That's been the reaction to it so far this week.
And I do want to toss out a little bit of historical background here before we move on. It looks like in the early 2000s, maybe 30% of American people did not go to the movies in a calendar year. That means 70% of Americans went to movies in those years. Around the pandemic and shortly after the pandemic, that number dropped to 55 to 60%. Now, this poll is suggesting, and it's not saying that this is in fact a number. It's saying that people would prefer rather than not, but that is 66% of people saying that they would rather watch movies at home than in theaters. So we have seen a decline from roughly 30% of Americans all the way up to somewhere in the 60th percentile. That is bad news. That's nearly a doubling of people. That essentially means movie theaters have lost half their audience.
Simply stated, the industry has been disrupted. And when that happens, there is no going back. And the sooner people start adapting to that and making plans for it, rather than sticking their fingers in their ears and going, la, 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 I can't hear you, the sooner we can start doing something about it. And I will say that I'm impressed with people like Bob Iger who seem to get the fact that that is the reality now and they have to adapt.
I mean, I look at the biggest example of this as actually you and Kim, David, because I've known you guys forever. And I feel like you guys were going to the theater almost every single weekend. And then how many times have you gone to a movie theater basically in the last, 2 years?
You're absolutely right. Kim, it wasn't at all unusual for us to see 2 movies in a weekend and sometimes even 3, was it?
Yeah, no, that was pretty typical for us. And Tim is absolutely right. I don't think we've been since November.
Yeah, I think we decided we watched either 11 or 12 movies in theaters in 2023. And I want to say something important here. That still probably places us in the top 10 percentile.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Once a month. Yes.
A movie viewing, because that's how much it has been disrupted. But for us, that is a dramatic downgrade. And it's because Kim has her beloved 82-inch TV downstairs. And, we've got a 2 TV room upstairs, and we've got our master bedroom has a 65-inch TV and a projector. So we can have 2 TVs on in a couple of rooms, and we can have, an 82-inch TV downstairs. We have developed our own home theater experience. Our cats are here. Our snacks are here. Everything is more convenient. And Tim, I don't know how much we need to beat people over the head with it, but, they list the positives of what the poll responses said. It's pretty much the things I'm saying right now. You can pause a TV if you have to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
It's a game changer. It really is.
Yeah, actually, one thing I'm surprised isn't mentioned in the reasons is just general improvements in technology. Like, yeah, I get it. 20 years ago, the size of the TVs you mentioned were thousands and thousands of dollars, and now they are way more affordable. It's not excessive expense to make your own home theater setup with a big TV, a decent sound system, and comfortable seating.
Exactly. The home is the competition to the theater across the board. And the other thing about it is it used to be if you wanted a big TV, it was living room furniture. And I know that that's very difficult for some of the readers to comprehend, but it's true. We had a television that it was going to be at the house as long as we were at the house because it was just, 200 pounds to move. Our first HD TV weighed more than 100 pounds and was thick. I mean, super thick. And now it happens every time we get a new TV where I will be like, oh, Kim, I don't know if we can carry this. And I'll pick it up and I'm like, oh, I can carry 5 of these myself. We're good. These are the little things that have changed that have led to an overall industry evolution, and we're not coming back from it.
All right, Tim, I know there's really not much to talk about with regard to box office this week, is there?
This weekend, no, but we can do a quick recap how last weekend was pretty good. We had the debut of Kung Fu Panda 4, 58 million for the weekend, and then Dune Part 2, 46.2 million for the weekend, so down 44%, but at 157 million after 2 weekends. That's as good news as we're going to get in 2024. This weekend, those are still the top 2 movies. They're actually pretty close together. Kung Fu Panda 4, 8.8 million, Dune Part 2, 8.1 million, and actually will cross 200 million by the end of the weekend. New this weekend in third, Arthur the King, and that's 3 million. So yeah, there you go. It's in a nutshell. Things are good at the top, but then it's a steep drop from there. And that's one of the things we've been saying is that's not sustainable for theaters.
But let's not gloss over the positive too much, which is we are going to have a $200 million film. And that's a big deal because there were only 8 of them last year. So Dune 2 has exceeded my expectations. I was thinking about 175 million. And honestly, I was expecting less rather than better. So there clearly is demand, and this is definitely one that falls into the conversation we were just having, where it is a cinematic experience, and it's probably the kind you want to watch in IMAX if you possibly can. So, lots of positives there, and as you went into to tell on last week, Kung Fu Panda 3 was not really a hit. Kung Fu Panda 4 doing this well, that's a relief to everybody.
Yeah, that'll be over 100 million by the end of the weekend as well. So that's 2 movies now for 2024 crossing 100 million. Bob Marley One Love is getting pretty close. It's at 91 million. I don't think there's enough gas left in the tank, but Paramount should keep it in theaters and try. We keep basically making the same point, but there's experiences that such as Dune, which are good. I had a coworker all excited to see it in IMAX, and he absolutely loved it. And yeah, Kung Fu Panda 4, nice rebound from the third one, but you said they definitely took heart to the reaction to the third and made this one funny, and there you go.
And the other point to make, only 24 films last year earned 100 million. So having 2 in theaters right now that are hot, that's, the kind of temporary relief that places like AMC and Regal need at this moment. So this is a win for everybody.
Yeah, this is the last 2 weekends are basically as busy as theaters have been all year.
Yeah, and the dog movie has been really well received. The reviews aren't necessarily the best for Arthur the King, but I was reading a thing that said that something like 97% of audience members reacted really positively to it in theaters. I'm trying to get a cinema score right now, but I mean, that's a low budget hit of its own accord, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it's in 3,000 theaters, 3 million on Friday, not the best, but I guess if the word of mouth on it is good, it can hang in there as a mid-level hit, which is the type of thing that is needed to keep Hollywood making these movies and keep theaters afloat.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now, and it's an A cinema score, so, it was well received. Your words there kind of reinforce just how much I've lowered my expectations and how desperate I am for any positive news about box office right now.
Exactly.
Yikes.
Yeah, Cabrini, last week's release, also has an A cinema score, so...
But at least this one has, has Mark Wahlberg.
I guess.
If that's, hey, that's enough for some people. But yeah, audiences are enjoying it. So, hey, only a 19 million budget. So yeah, it might hang in there. If Lionsgate wants to turn it into a hit, they should actually maybe invest in some marketing. All right. So should we move on to some ratings then?
Yes, we should.
All right. We have the Nielsen streaming ratings for Monday, February 12th to Sunday, February 18th. And I don't think there's too much here, but let's see what we have this week. Your top original show is returning, and that is, of course, Love is Blind, 907 million minutes for 76 episodes. Because, of course, the first 6 episodes of the 6th season arrived on February 14th. They staggered this one over a few weeks, as they've traditionally done with their reality shows. So 3 more will arrive on the 21st, 2 more on the 28th, and then finales on March 6th and March 13th. Every time there's a new season, we see it here. And of course, it's being a couple weeks since we've had anything really break out. I'm not surprised it's on the top because the numbers drop pretty steeply from here. Second is Griselda, 461 million minutes. That's been here for a few weeks now, 6 episodes. One Day also arrived last week, 460 million minutes, 14 episodes from Netflix. Halo from Paramount Plus is in 4th, 458 million minutes. Now, we saw this arrive on last week's ratings, and we were kind of surprised that it's here, considering it's not all that great. But this is an increase from last week, despite just 1 new episode. And that's because of, the way the Nielsen ratings work is this is Monday to Sunday. Guess what was the Sunday before? And that would be the Super Bowl, which aired on CBS or maybe Paramount Plus if you were watching it. And they definitely advertised, 1, Paramount Plus, and 2, Halo.
I'm sorry, my brain's still frozen on the fact. You say it went up?
Yes, it did.
So after 2 episodes, it didn't rank. After 3 episodes, it ranked, but we figured it wasn't going to show up again. Mm-hmm. And instead, it increased pretty dramatically. Did people watch this Super Bowl thing?
Guess what? Marketing still kind of works.
That's like a fire hose of content. They just shot at a very, very mediocre television show. That is like a jaw-dropping number. I mean, I know that, nobody's going to talk about it, but I'm like frozen by that.
Yeah, we were not expecting it to stick around. And in fact, I would not be surprised to maybe not see it again after all these people watched it and went, oh, really? That was the Halo show? But yeah, just the fact that enough people were exposed to the fact that I guess it exists was enough to give it a surprisingly bump from last week's number. It's up about 25%, I think we said, right, Raul?
Yeah,
for just one more episode too. So that's definitely people who started watching it from the beginning because they were unaware it existed apparently. Mr. and Mrs. Smith from Prime Video is fifth, 416 million minutes for eight episodes. And Reacher has been hanging on quite well, 309 million minutes for 16 episodes, also Prime Video. A couple new shows, finally. In seventh, House of Ninjas, 287 million minutes from Netflix. I know we talked about it, but couldn't tell you anything else about it other than it's definitely Japanese.
All we need to know is it has the greatest movie title ever, and that's enough.
I guess, do you really need any other explanation than House of Ninjas? What else do you want?
I kind of like to think of it in combination with the next show, because in eighth place is Masters of the Air, and I just think that paints a picture. House of Ninjas, Masters of the Air.
Yeah, this in eighth, 243 million minutes for 5 episodes, and this is from Apple TV Plus, which is not a streaming service we see on these ratings terribly often. Yeah, this actually, has nothing to do with ninjas. This is a World War II miniseries.
Kind of considered a follow-up to Band of Brothers, am I right?
That's right. Actually, yes, the Band of Brothers, and then the Pacific, and then this is kind of the follow-up to that. Basically, like the Air Force units rather than, say, the Western Theater and Pacific Theater stories.
A very strong showing for Apple TV Plus with number 8 on the originals. At the same time, we have to consider the fact that these are very low ratings almost entirely across the board with 243 million minutes. This is not a strong chart.
Yeah, it's not a great originals chart, but I also will point out, since it's Apple TV Plus, they tend not to drop everything at once. And this premiered on January 26th with its first 2 episodes and then was weekly from here. So we had the 5th episode air on the 16th, and there are actually 4 more to go. So maybe we see it hang around as long as, if there's nothing else that will push it out of the way, because like we were saying, 243, not a great number for originals, but I could see it hang on for a couple more weeks as it adds episodes. If not for Love is Blind, it would be one of the worst originals charts we've ever seen, mostly because most of these shows aren't new. Like Griselda's been multiple weeks now, Reacher has been here for quite some time, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, One Day are all multiple weeks. So yeah, your newest shows are in 7th and 8th.
Save us, House of Ninjas, Masters of the Air.
The Crown, which deserves a new season based on recent events, in 9th, 242 million minutes, 63 episodes. And in new and 10th, Lose the Heart of Light, 233 million minutes for 20 episodes. This is a Netflix original Brazilian series that's aimed at kids, actually.
Fascinating.
Movies is led by Oppenheimer, 612 million minutes. And no, of course, because of the delay in these ratings, this is not an Oscar effect, but it is the fact that it just showed up on streaming on Peacock.
And had the playoff game bump because it got marketed that way.
Yes, still some benefits from the now month-old playoff game exclusive to Peacock, because this did not arrive on Peacock till February 16th, but they definitely told you it was coming if you watched that playoff game.
Tim, to the best of your knowledge, is this the first time Peacock has ever won any single category?
Yeah, I believe so.
Look who's all grown up.
Right? Congratulations, Peacock. You did it.
And in 5 years, you might even make some money. But you won't.
But they won't, yeah. Second, Lover, Stalker, Killer. We saw that last week, 470 million minutes. The Super Mario Brothers movie, 395 million minutes from Netflix. Again, that will just be taking any residence on this list until it departs Peacock.
Do you want a shocking update on that?
Sure.
There's going to be a sequel. It's confirmed. Can you believe that? 2026. Go ahead and mark your calendar.
The Super Mario Brothers movie 2, because, why not? But new and 4th, Players, 360 million minutes. This was the romantic comedy just in time for Valentine's Day, starring Gina Rodriguez, that I know we talked about. Basically a journalist who hooks up her friends and then, falls into her own trap or something like that.
Yeah, like a movie version of the New Girl.
Yes. And it even has Damon Wayans Jr., who was on New Girl. The Marvels, that was the top movie last week from Disney Plus, is still here, but in 5th, 337 million minutes. So I don't expect to see it next week.
It'll frankly depend on the depth of the top 10. Mm-hmm. Without doing titles, the 10th place finisher this week was 216 million minutes. Tim, we had talked about it last time, and we'd said we expect to see it this week, but we don't know about the following week. And we weren't even that sure about this week. This is exactly the kind of drop you'd forecasted. And if it keeps that rate of decline, it's just going to be a photo finish to get 3 weeks on the charts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a question of is it 9th or 10th next week, and just kind of depends where the numbers land.
It is not doing well. This is a problem.
Just not used to seeing like Marvel movies struggling after just how dominant they were in the last decade. And then all of a sudden we come out of the pandemic and audiences are just like, nah, we're good. It's not like this one was bad either, because they have been bad. There have been bad Marvel movies in the last couple of years, and they still managed to do okay. But this one, I don't know, audiences just are tired.
I guess they're just over it, but it's a charming film. If you haven't given it a chance, give it a chance.
So here's a fun one. In 6th is the return of Dune, credited to Hulu, Max, and Netflix, 333 million minutes. First, I was like, oh, did it show up on Netflix just in time for people to reacquaint themselves with it for the sequel? But no, it turns out it actually left Netflix at the end of February, on February 29th, and then March 1st, of course, Dune Part 2 arrived in theaters. But this is just people watching it, I guess, before it left. Because we know that even though there's 3 services credited, the vast majority of this has to be on Netflix.
Yeah, that's right. I was one of those people who watched it on Netflix before it left the streamer. It was being promoted on Netflix as leaving soon. So I figured, I guess I should watch it, knowing full well that if I had just waited a week, I could have watched it on Max.
Just had to say, screw you, Zaslav. I'm not watching it on your service. I'm going to watch it on Netflix instead.
That's what I was going to say. Well, we're not going to let Max have the satisfaction.
The rest of the movies is things we have seen before. Moana is back, 288 million minutes in 7th from Disney Plus, of course. American Assassin, 274 million minutes. Orion and the Dark, 250 million minutes. And Seraphim Falls, 216 million minutes. Those are all, of course, Netflix. Acquired is 9 shows we have seen before, led once again by Bluey, 1.1 billion minutes, 450 episodes. Young Sheldon in second, 1 billion minutes, credited to Max and Netflix, of course. True Detective. This is the finale of the 4th season, arriving on HBO/Max during this ratings week. So 773 million minutes for 30 episodes. Actually pretty good. This was definitely a hit for HBO, but they need more than that. We were having this discussion before. They're not the Prestige network anymore. They have a couple of good ones, but I feel like they're getting surpassed by Apple, in our opinion.
The more that they lose some of these shows by attrition, whatever ones they have left, I feel like they're the Discovery Network.
Our new show to the Acquired ratings is in 7th, and that is Monk. 123 episodes, 637 million minutes, credited to Netflix, Peacock, and Prime Video. But the reason it's here is because the entire series showed up on Netflix. Because
I love that Netflix subscribers are discovering the entire USA Network.
Right. The entire series showed up on Netflix on February 5th, so not surprised that it's here. But of course, we have to mention Suits is still here in 6th, and then Royal Pains we saw arrive last week in 8th. So yes, the hottest streaming service right now is the USA Network circa 2010.
Shouldn't they be on the phone right now trying to get rights to Psych?
Yes, Psych
yes.
next. Yes,
Where's
Psych
burn
next, you
Where's
cowards.
Burn Notice?
Burn Notice. Do it, you cowards.
We're getting box office profits greatest hits right now, and it is weird.
Yes, this is the Jason Kylar / Bonnie Hammer Appreciation Podcast. So yeah, one of the more math weeks in terms of ratings, but I guess they can't all be winners. How soon? When did Shogun premiere?
Shogun debuted on February 27th, and Disney has already stated what a huge hit it is.
Oh yeah.
So we know that's going to appear in a couple of weeks, and it's probably going to be at or near the top.
Okay, so yeah, not next week. I can never remember when things are coming, so at least in 2 weeks we'll have some excitement. But yeah, not a great week for the ratings. But again, they can't all be winners.
We're also going to have to calibrate what a winner is because because of the strike, this is going to be our 2024. It's just the reality.
All right. Thank you for that, Tim. In our green lights and cancellations this week, David Zaslav has found a movie he won't cancel. Instead, the latest adaptation of the Stephen King novel Salem's Lot will be going straight to streaming in 2024.
Releasing something straight to streaming on Max. That sounds familiar. Have we seen anyone do that before?
I do believe they said they wouldn't do that anymore.
Quite recently, in fact.
this has such a stink to it. You feel like they want to cancel it, but they must have some kind of contractual agreement with the filmmakers or with Stephen King or something. And so their only option is to put it on streaming instead of theatrical. I'm not hopeful for the quality of this movie. And the fact that a studio that has said, you know what, we're going to monetize our movies at every opportunity by putting them in theaters first and streaming second, and then they announce they're putting this movie on streaming exclusively. Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah, from the Variety article, Salem's Lot was originally intended as a September 2022 release, but the studio pushed the film to spring 2023, citing COVID-related post-production delays. This can't be good at all.
Oh, I'm sure it's absolutely terrible. But what I keep thinking is, I want to make another HBO comparison here. There was a really, really entertaining James Garner movie named Barbarians at the Gate that aired on HBO. And the premise of it was the fall of RGR Nabisco. And it was like an inside-the-scenes look at how corporate arrogance and incompetence absolutely wiped out a company. We're going to see something like that with the Warner Brothers Discovery merger at some point, because there's too many people who know too much, and it's too bad. That's what we're looking at right now, because all of these things we're seeing paint a picture that this place is in turmoil, and I think the water is above their nose now.
What's really terrible is Salem's Lot is a good book. How do you ruin it? I don't know, but they clearly have. In the best news this week, FX has renewed The Bear for a 4th season on Hulu.
I, for one, am looking forward to the best comedy on television, delivering even more familial trauma.
And we haven't even gotten season 3 yet, but I guess they renewed it so quickly. Supposedly, seasons 3 and 4 will be filmed together, so maybe we don't have quite a delay between those 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think that this is a move made out of necessity because we know how well the entire cast is doing. You know, historically, the way we were watching it work with streaming is famous actors would then take streaming shows as their prestige work. This has been the inverse, where a streaming show has proven so successful that it has launched at least 3 careers. And I mean, like, careers that look like they're going to be huge. And so keeping the main talent available is going to just be an extraordinary challenge. I mean, one of the people is going to be the Thing in Fantastic Four. That's a big get. And you could argue that Io Edeberry is like the hottest actress in Hollywood right now. Her and Sydney Sweeney have the rocket strapped to their backs and they're shooting into the atmosphere right now. So getting all these people available for a 2 or 3 month shoot is going to be a challenge. So what they're doing is they're going to buy themselves some time. They're going to shoot 2 seasons consecutively. That's going to happen in time for one to come out this summer, one to come out next summer, and then they'll probably reevaluate in 18 months and try and find a window when they can all get together again. There has been some speculation that maybe the show could end after 4 seasons. I get that. I'm not ruling that out, but I think that there's also too much money in The Bear now to let it go, because we're seeing it just explode in popularity. It's fascinating because, as was the case with Gabby's Dollhouse, we've seen this story in its entirety, and none of us could have expected this conclusion.
Over at Netflix, Black Mirror has been renewed for a 7th season and will include a follow-up on 4th season fan favorite episode, USS Callister.
Black Mirror is an anthology series, and so every episode's going to have a different plot, a different cast. There's a couple of marquee episodes, including the San Junipero episode. The USS Callister episode is one that really clicked with audiences, and I'm glad they're actually coming back to it.
Yeah, that's a great episode. And Peaky Blinders creator Stephen Knight is set to create a new series for the streamer based on the Guinness brewing family. Happy St. Patrick's Day. That's been described as a 19th century version of Succession.
I think this one's going to be big for Netflix. Good for them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, as always, we close out with what's been keeping us busy over the past week. And I will talk about Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour next week. I have a little bit of time to go before I finish watching it, and I'll probably watch it again because it's terrific. But I do want to mention a absolutely delightful book that I read called Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a story about an orc, formerly a fighting orc, who gets tired of that life and goes and starts a coffee shop. And it is a lovely, cozy little story. I don't want to say much more, but I just strongly recommend it. It's absolutely wonderful. If you like Dungeons and Dragons, you will probably enjoy this little book, and it is a very quick read. Raul, how about you?
Well, given that there's been a lull in the curling on television lately, I was able to catch up on some streaming. I've seen a couple of movies, including the Hulu movie Self-Reliance and Ricky Stenicki on Prime Video. I'll probably be talking about those in upcoming episodes. This week, I also got to wrap up the Hulu, I'm going to call it a whodunit, called Death and Other Details, which stars Mandy Patinkin as a detective trying to solve a murder. He is, in fact, not the main protagonist of the series. He is only one of an ensemble. This series started off strong. It very much had that Agatha Christie whodunit vibe to it, but quickly went off the rails. It was all over the place. It did corporate espionage and intrigue. It had a little bit of a spy James Bond vibe for one episode. There's a lot of like cyber sleuthing happening. It really had difficulty deciding just what kind of series it was. And then the mercenaries showed up. So this got really weird at the end, and ultimately turned out that we were probably watching a series that was very similar to The Blacklist, that series on NBC. We just didn't realize it until nearly the end. What's more is that the finale is used mostly to wrap up a mystery that is solved actually in the penultimate episode, and it is very disjointed with a series of flashbacks and flash forwards and flash sideways. It's hard to really tell what's happening. And what's more is that they leave you on a cliffhanger as our protagonists, our ensemble of heroes, stumble upon a dead body that seems to be unrelated entirely to everything we've been seeing in the current season. I just don't really understand what the series was, and it really makes it hard to enjoy. It's unfortunate because I like the style of it. It definitely had a really interesting look to it, but unfortunately, narrative-wise, it feels like 6 different people wrote it, and I'm not sure that I could recommend it.
All right, Tim, what's been keeping you busy?
So my schedule wasn't really conducive to putting more time into the thaumaturge, which I mentioned last week, but I think I have time coming in the future, so I'll give a full breakdown of that. But this week I want to talk about a guilty pleasure that came back. And when it first launched, like, I don't know, almost 20 years ago now, there's a show that was way better than it had any right to be. And as stupid as it was, that show was Deal or No Deal. I've always found that the way they just built the tension, Howie Mandel sold it really well as host. So that first year or so it was on, I really enjoyed that show. And then, they dragged it out. They just made it a daily show. They made a syndicated version, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of forgot about it until, I guess, probably as a result of the strike and the networks going to unscripted content, they brought back something this year and called it Deal or No Deal Island. And it is basically, they turned Deal or No Deal into a reality competition show. It shouldn't work, but it does. We have 13 people on an island. It's a combination of like Survivor and Deal or No Deal, actually. There's a like physical sort of challenge where each person collects cases that will then go on the board with, big dollar amounts. And the person with the highest dollar amount wins immunity, basically, and then selects the 2 people with the lowest dollar amounts, who then faces the banker in the game of Deal or No Deal. And then that person then plays the game. If they win the game, if they made a good deal, if the offer they took or their case was higher than what they had or than the remaining case, then they win and they select a player to be eliminated. Otherwise, if they made a bad deal, like say they took the offer but their case was more, they lose and are eliminated. It shouldn't work, but it does, especially the way they build the tension. And it's very funny how in the first episode, a bunch of people feel bad for one person, and then she ends up kind of screwing them all in the end. And it's like, oh, gee, they shouldn't have been nice to her. And then now they're all scheming to get rid of her, and they just can't so far. The host is Joe Manganiello, and he's pretty good. He's not quite Howie Mandel, but he's entertaining. It's 13 people that, well, we don't know most of them. One of them was apparently a model on the original series, so it's funny they brought her back. The 13th person, Kim, you and David are quite familiar with because he's a Survivor veteran, and that is Boston Rob.
Boston Rob, yep, yeah. I knew he was on it. Mm-hmm.
So, of course, everyone's either scheming to get rid of him or sucking up to him because they know he's good at this sort of thing. Yeah, this is a guilty pleasure. It shouldn't work, but it does. It's on NBC, and then episodes are showing up on Peacock. If you like the original series, yeah, you'll like this. It's pretty fun.
All right, David, what's been keeping you busy?
I think you know the answer to this.
I do. I didn't have to ask.
We had a very hectic work week, and we thought this was going to be a slow week, and it just didn't work out that way. But we did devote most of our free time to mastering Queen's Blood, which is the card game within Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is just hilarious. The fate of all civilization is at stake, and we'd be like, yeah, I know, Sephiroth, Sephiroth, Sephiroth. We've got to win this card game. And that was legitimately what happened. And it led to this marvelous quote from my wife. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to learn. I don't need that right now. That's only a slight exaggeration. Kim was just wanting the rush of playing the cards, playing the cards, playing the cards. And I was trying to figure out what was actually happening, which was my bad. We're enjoying it. It is not a perfect game. And I want to say that some of the mini games are like incredibly frustrating, and there are at least 30 of them. I'm not joking or being hyperbolic. There's just so many, it's like hard to count them. But the ones that are fun are an absolute joy, and then the ones that suck, they're still, kind of fun. There's one where you have to punch a guy, and it's decidedly 8-bit, and the controls are terrible, which is probably the point for an 8-bit game. But I'm just looking at Kim like, I hate everything about this. And then the highlights, like we had to go back to the place, it's the Haunted Mansion reference, and it's just thrilling us. This game is an utter delight, and it is definitely a game that you will get your money's worth. And Tim, I don't know if you've ever been a Final Fantasy person. I don't know if you're looking at this, but I really think there's legitimately 200 hours of gameplay in this. So you should check it out.
Fortunately, right now, it's what, PS5 exclusive?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, so I do have to wait, but I assume within a year or so, since I think the last one, the Final Fantasy VII Remake,
yes,
eventually came to other platforms after like a year or so. So yeah, I'll absolutely give it a chance when it's available there. And actually, I think the Steam Spring Sale began this week, and they put that game on sale for half off. So I may grab that.
Oh, you can get Final Fantasy VII, not Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on Steam right now?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just go
Rebirth is not on Steam.
To you then.
Okay.
You'll love it. Okay. So that's it, Kim. Bye.
Like I said, every good RPG has a mini game that you need to spend several hours on, even though the world could end at any moment.
Yep. It's part of being an RPG, isn't it? Thank you for listening to Streaming Into the Void. Please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, and we welcome your feedback. Remember that we're on social media at Streaming Void and online at streamingvoid.com. If you like what you're hearing, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/streamingvoid. Be sure to watch for us again next week.